Welcome! I have a fantastic video for you today. Today I will be showing you how to knit and crochet the dress I'm wearing right now. It's called the Arabella Dress and it's super cute. It's made with the Sentro 48 pin knitting machine, which looks like this. If you have the Addi King Size knitting machine, that'll work as well, or you can hand knit this top portion. Either way, this is a great dress to make, and let's get started in the tutorial. The Arabella dress can also be made into a top, which is the first version that I made for this design. The top portion is the Sentro 48 pin knitting machine knitted fabric in a tube, and then the bottom portion is crochet and it's done in a shell stitch. We'll go through how to make both the top and the dress, so stick around. The first thing we need to do to make this top is pick a yarn. I chose Hobie Kind Feather, which is a 100% acrylic yarn. There's some more information on the back about the care here, but it was a nice brown color and that's what I'm going to begin with. I'm ready to cast on my yarn now, so I find the white needle on the Sentro knitting machine and I wrap my yarn around that. No need to make any sort of hook or tie here. And then I'll bring it behind the next hook in front of the next hook, and I'll just repeat this pattern all the way around, and this is just a very general cast on for the knitting machine. After that, we'll move on to actually knitting the tube that we're going to be working with. Once I get to the place where I initially started my cast on, I'm going to go ahead and thread my hook through the tension here. I am going to put it through the small hook and the second smallest hook just because of the size of yarn that I have and how it's wound up. This worked best to keep the tension for me here. And for the first row, I'm just going to turn very gently, making sure that everything connects, that the tension is correct. I am adjusting it here because it was a little bit too tight. And I'll continue to wind, making sure that everything has connected. And I'm just going to continue like this for the next few minutes, and we'll see how far we get, and then I'll talk to you about how to measure the size of the tube that you need based on your own size. Now it's time to make sure that I make enough rows around on my knitting machine so that this tube will fit around my bust. I'm going to measure the amount of rows per inch that I have here, which turns out to be around 3.5 rows per inch. And I will multiply that 3.5 by the size of my bust in inches, which is 36 inches. You just take the same tape measure and measure around your bust. Mine's 36, so I did 3.5 times 36. It's about 126 rows. Less than that actually gave me what I was looking for. I did about 120 rows here, and when I stretched out the fabric, I got around 36 to 37 inches, which is appropriate for my size. Once I had the appropriate length, it was time to cast off, so I cut my working yarn and pulled it out of my tension, and then just let it hang sort of in the middle of my project here. And I'm going to unwind about 1/4 to 1/2 of my project, and then thread this yarn around a needle so that I can pick up those live stitches and make sure that none of them drop. So I'm grabbing my tapestry needle here and threading the end of that working yarn through the needle, and I'm taking a look at the stitch just to the right of where my working yarn has ended, and I'm going to thread from top to bottom through each of these stitches. And you can see that I'm holding down the next stitch in line so that it doesn't fall off. I have had that happen before where I am trying to pick up these stitches and one of them just happens to slip off. That is absolutely no fun, so do make sure to hold your work down. And once you get a little ways, you can pull multiple stitches at a time and thread your yarn through them like so. I'm going to go ahead and do this for the entirety of the tube, and it doesn't matter if it pulls tight or anything like that. We're actually going to cinch this tight anyway. Once I get to the end of my stitches, I'm just going to zoom in here so you can see how I finish this off, but it is like I've done with every other stitch. I'm just going to take my needle and thread that working loop off of the Sentro knitting machine and put it onto my needle and then pull the yarn all the way through. Once I have my tube, I can go ahead and secure both of the ends, and I'm going to do this by pulling both of the yarns from the ends tight and securing them in place. If you've ever made a headband on the Sentro knitting machine, I'm going to be doing essentially the same process as that, and you can go ahead and skip ahead. So what I'm going to do here is cut my tail yarn, not totally off, but just so it's more manageable to work with. And then I will just thread it back and forth a bunch of times until I feel like this end is secure. And I will move on to the next end and do the exact same thing. Once I have both ends tied off, kind of in a scrunch like this, I'm going to go ahead and fold them towards each other like shown on the screen now, making sure that everything is flat around the back, that nothing is twisting. I'm going to pull out each of these sort of scrunched up areas and just make sure that they line up really nicely. This is going to ensure that the top is going to fit well. And then I'm going to take one of my working yarns here and just thread it through the other side to connect the right and the left side. And this essentially makes our bandeau top. And from this top, we are going to be using crochet around it and then to make the dress portion. But if you just wanted a bandeau top, honestly, you can stop here or add your own crochet details to it. I've got the two ends of the top secured together, and if I give this a nice big stretch, I get to around 18 inches, and that's great because I'm going to double that in my head. That equals 36, and my bust is 36 inches around. So we did a good job. Our bandeau is going to fit. Now for this next portion, I'm going to be adding a single crochet around both the top and the bottom portion of this bandeau. I'm going to switch my yarn colors because this is a yarn that I have on hand. I really like the softness and the color of it. And this is the Bernat Baby Sport weight yarn. I just have a lot of it and I figured it would look nice with this brown. So I'm going to go ahead and find one of my stitches on the side of my bandeau and insert my hook into just one single V stitch here, which is one knit stitch. It's kind of like looking at the top of a crochet stitch, to be honest, and I'm going to single crochet into that place. I will continue grabbing one single stitch per row around this knitted top and adding a single crochet into each of these holes. I will do this the entire way around, including into the spot where we had connected the two sides together at the front. Once I get more towards the front, I'm just going to make sure that I'm not turning any of these stitches or making them in any way that's going to twist or crumple or in any way not look good. I'll just grab the stitches that I can up until the point where I need to switch over to the next side of the bandeau. So currently working on one side, and then it looks like I can grab one more stitch here and then move on to the next side. And I just want to make sure that it's lined up so that I can go straight around the next side without twisting or turning the fabric. Here is what that front side looks like. There is a little gap in between the two sides, but it really doesn't make that big of a difference, and I'm just going to continue then all the way back to where I started. I've made it back around in single crochet, and I'm going to slip stitch into my first single crochet stitch and pull that through the loop on my hook here. That completes my slip stitch. I'm going to pull a big loop so we can go ahead and take a look at what this looks like now. So I've done the entire portion in single crochet just around that top part. I'm going to do the same for the bottom part. I have both the top and bottom of my bandeau outlined in the single crochet stitch, and now it is time to begin the actual top portion or the dress portion of the Arabella top. And so what I'm going to do, I have my working yarn here for the bottom portion of the top. I'm just going to insert my hook back into here and chain 3 to begin. Now we're going to be doing a shell stitch here, which means that every 5 stitches, I'm going to put 5 stitches into one single place. To begin with, I'm only putting 3 in this first stitch because it's half of a shell. Now I need to connect that shell back down to the base fabric, which means I skip 2 stitches, and in the third stitch I'm going to place 1 single crochet stitch. Then I'm ready to skip 2 more stitches and insert my hook for a double crochet into the third stitch. I'm going to place 5 double crochets into this place and then repeat. Skip 2, single crochet, skip 2, 5 double crochet, and that is a shell stitch. We are just going to be using this pattern for the first round around the top, and then we're going to switch it up a little bit for the second and third rounds, just so we get the appropriate shape that we're looking for. So skip 2 stitches, single crochet, skip 2 stitches, 5 double crochets, and work that all the way around the top. You may be wondering, well, Sarah, what the heck do I do with this V-stitch? I can't put a shell there. We're actually going to place a triple double crochet cluster stitch into here. That just means 3 double crochet stitches all stitched together. So I'm going to yarn over, insert my hook into one of those stitches. It doesn't really matter which one, just pick one. Yarn over, insert my hook into the next stitch, pull through 2 loops. I've got 3 loops on my hook. Yarn over, insert my hook into the next stitch, pull through 2 of those loops. Now I've got 4 loops on my hook. 3 of those are part of double crochets. Yarn over and pull through all of those stitches, and that mashes them all together to create 1 stitch, which we'll use in row 2, and we'll consider it just to be 1 stitch. I'll continue with a single crochet next and then a shell stitch after I skip 2 stitches. So what just happened, we did all of those shell stitches. We got to the V where we needed to make sure that our fabric wasn't going to burst out of our chest, so we had to do a double crochet cluster stitch, which takes a multitude of stitches and makes them into 1 stitch. So that's how that looks here. It's going to go ahead and even out in the next row as well, and it's going to look really good. At this point, I've worked my way around in shell stitch, repeat with single crochets in between, and I'm ready to finish my original shell stitch. So I will insert my hook into that first single crochet we were working in and place 2 double crochets there. I will find the original chain 3 and insert my hook into the third chain of the chain 3 and place a slip stitch to join those 2 sides together, which completes that shell. Then I will chain 3 and turn my work. We are going to be turning our work every other row to work in opposite directions, just to make sure that our work doesn't tilt in one direction or the other. I'm going to begin again with 2 double crochets because my initial chain 3 counts as a double crochet. Now here's where we differ things a little bit. I can see that single crochet from row 1. It's right in between my shell stitches, and in this place I'm going to place 1 double crochet. Next, I'm going to find the middle stitch, the third stitch of my shell. It's going to be the very middle one, and I will place another shell stitch into this place. That's 5 double crochets into that single stitch, the middle stitch of the shell from the previous row. Once I complete that, I can move on to the next single crochet from row 1, and I will go ahead and place a double crochet into the single crochet. I'm going to work all the way until I get to that V where we put that double crochet cluster in the previous row, and I'll show you how to work through that area. And then we're just going to repeat this shell stitch double crochet pattern for the entirety of the dress. I just completed the shell right before this cluster stitch we did in the previous row, and I'm actually going to ignore the 2 single crochets around it and place my double crochet into the top of that cluster stitch from below. And then I'll just move on to the next shell stitch. So that's how we accounted for that gap, that V gap that the two sides come together to form in that brown knitted fabric. We did that cluster stitch and then the double crochet on top of the cluster stitch just to account for the amount of space that we needed to reach the height of the current round that we are working in. From here, all of the rounds are very straightforward. You'll do shells on top of shells and double crochets on top of double crochets, and you'll just do that until you reach the length that you desire for the top or the dress. The amount of rounds that you will do for the top or the dress are heavily going to be dependent on the type of yarn you're using. For this purple and cream top, I used a worsted weight yarn for the body section, and I only did about 7 rows and then 4 more rows in a sport weight yarn to get a length that I liked. And then in the dress, I'm going to be doing a lot more rows than that. We also need to talk about where the straps are going to go. I'm going to use stitch markers and just visually look at where I want the straps to begin. There's really no science to this. I think I'm about 30 to 35 stitches on each side from the center front, but honestly, you just need to put the strap where you feel most comfortable putting it. Put it more towards your shoulders means that the straps are likely to fall off. More towards the center and they'll stay on a little bit better. You could cross the straps in the back, you could make tie straps, you could leave it strapless. It's really up to you at this point, but I'm just going to put the stitch markers here so I have a visual reference, and then I'm going to decide how long I need that strap to be to appropriately hold that top up on my body. So how long do the straps need to be? Well, if you have a tape measure handy, you can hold that or kind of drape that along your back and see if you can read the number. It's a bit difficult for me to hold that there and then read. It's about 16 inches, maybe 15 inches would be an appropriate strap length. Alternatively, you can grab just a piece of yarn and then attach it to the back or the front and then pull it tight and then cut it to the length of the strap that you want. So that's what I'm showing here. I'm just trying to hold that yarn in the back where a shoulder strap would attach. In hindsight, I could have just tied it in the back and then pulled it over my shoulder to the front and then marked where I wanted that to be and then cut it to length. And then I would use the yarn as a measuring device for how long I needed to make the strap when I was crocheting it. So that also turned out to be 15 inches, so either method works. Once I have the front portion marked out, I know how long my straps need to be. I just need to decide where they're going to attach in the back. I'm going to be using stitch markers to make sure that I do this evenly on each side. I think I have about 25 stitches in between where my front strap and my back strap are. Again, you can crisscross them, you can decide where you want them to be. I'm just counting stitches here so that I make sure that the straps are evenly attached on both sides in the back. Once I know where the strap is going to begin and end and how long it's going to be, I can go ahead and attach my yarn via slip stitch or single crochet to that first stitch here on the front for my strap. And then I'm just going to chain until I get to about 15 inches, which is what I decided my strap length should be. So I'm going to chain 50 inches here, just making sure that I keep track of my stitches so I can make sure that the other side has the number of stitches that I put here repeated so that they are even. It turned out to be about 50 stitches for me to achieve 15 inches in length. I will then attach this strand of yarn, these chains, to the place on the back of the top through a slip stitch here, and then I'm going to chain one and turn my work. Now, the reason I'm going to turn my work is because I'm going to put single crochets back along this row. So I'm going to have 50 single crochets back through all of the chains that I just made. Alternatively, if you want to do a foundation single crochet for your strap, you're more than welcome to do that. Or if you like a different type of strap, you can do that as well. We will be placing shell stitches on these straps, so that is where we will go to next. Once I'm done working the single crochets back along my chains, I can go ahead and slip stitch into the next stitch around my tank top. Now this is working into the underarm. And then I will turn my work and I'm ready to do the shell stitches now. So the fabric that I have facing me now is the underarm, and that is the strap going over the underarm here. Now it's time to go ahead and place our shell stitches into our fabric. I will begin this pattern with a single crochet into the first single crochet from the previous row, skip 2 stitches, and here comes our shell stitch. That's 5 double crochets into 1 stitch, just like we've been doing all around the body of our top or dress, whichever one you're making. Once I get those 5 double crochets into that stitch, I'll skip 2 and single crochet in the next stitch. Skip 2 and do our shell stitch. I'll do this all the way to the end, though the end has a little bit of a twist on how we're going to attach it. So go ahead and finish this part of the strap and I'll show you how to do the next row. I've just finished a single crochet in my shell repeat, but I still have another space to fill. We're going to place a half shell here, which is 3 double crochets. Then I'm going to slip stitch to the second stitch along the side there. And then I need to go up a row, so I'm going to slip stitch one more time into the next stitch along that underarm. I will turn my work and now it's time to do the second row of our shells here. Into the first stitch goes a single crochet, and into the single crochets go our shell stitches. Now this is how a closed shell repeat is done, and if you've ever made a shell baby blanket, you're very familiar with this. Then if it's the next shell stitch, we'll go ahead and place that single crochet into the middle stitch of the shell, a shell stitch into the single crochet, and repeat. I've come to the end of the second row of shell stitching. I'm going to single crochet into the middle of that shell stitch, and then again we're going to do a half shell stitch to finish us off, which is 3 double crochets. I will go ahead and slip stitch into the side of the work here and secure with another slip stitch, cut my yarn and pull through, and that is our strap completed. I'm going to do the exact same for the second strap so that they are identical but the mirror image of each other. With the 2 straps on, I can go ahead and try this top on, and I'm really liking the fit. I like the length of the straps, I like how the bust fits, and if I were to just keep this as a top, I would do that at this point, but I was really inspired by this pattern and I wanted to make it into a dress. So I'm just going to repeat that pattern and continue this into a full-length dress. At this point, I wanted to do a slight increase to the pattern because my hips go out a little bit further than my waist. So in these shell stitches, I am doing this like normal. So I'll do those 3 double crochets, but then I'm going to chain 1 and place 3 more double crochets into the middle of the shell stitch from the previous row. So instead of just doing 5 double crochets into the shell stitch, I'm actually doing 6. And there's a chain separating both groups of 3 that make the 6. And this is just going to give me a little more room in the pattern so that when I continue, the dress isn't going to be so snug over my hips. Once I finished that row, I decided I wanted another type of increase. So in the double crochet space from the round below, I'm actually putting a double crochet, chain one, double crochet, and this is called a double crochet V stitch. So I'm going to just increase every double crochet stitch from the previous row, and this again is going to give me some more fabric around my hips and my bum area. I'm also going to be continuing with that separated shell stitch. So the chain 3 or the double crochet 3, chain 1, double crochet 3. So we're going to continue in this pattern. This is totally optional. If you wanted a slim fitting dress, you could have just continued with the first pattern, but I'm just showing you a couple ways on how you can increase the fullness of the dress. And you can keep doing this too. Keep adding stitches in the pattern repeat as you see fit. If you want something that's flowy or tight or long or short, you can adjust it in this way, and this is just the way that I've found the best, that flows with the pattern and looks the nicest. Here is what those increases look like. So it comes out a little bit more over my hips, and you can see that here in the design. If you wanted to go out even further, again, you could continue increasing in this way. And here is the reveal. I really like how this dress turned out, and if you make one, I would love if you tag me on Instagram at totally_stitchcraft and show me your work. Well, I hope you have a great day and a fantastic day crocheting. Thanks for watching, and go ahead and hit that like button and subscribe, and feel free to share this video with all your crochet friends.